One thing I found about owning a highly complex vehicle like the Ford F-150 PowerBoost is that you've got to get in front of issues before they get to be a problem. You know, things like watching the coolant level, changing the oil early, and with the recent colder weather, I've found that the OEM 12-volt Motorcraft battery is a liability. I've seen post after post in the F-150 forums about low battery warnings and general system instability simply because of a low battery voltage. I've been around electronics my entire life, and if you have weak or unstable voltage or current delivery, it'll play hell with sensitive electronics. Dealer techs that don't know any better will spend weeks chasing gremlins instead of following Occam's razor, or the simple route of ensuring that the battery is good first. Now, this is where you run into two different types of owners, which I'll refer to as owner A versus owner B. Owner A believes that since the truck is under warranty, they're obliged to run down to the dealer, schedule an appointment a week or two in the future, and either drop the truck off or wait all day for a tech to get to it. All the dealer service tech is going to do is to throw an automated battery tester on it and let it do the evaluation instead of understanding the root issues of monitoring the battery voltage while it's at rest and during power up. They won't replace anything unless it throws an error code. At best, you get a new battery and you're only out of a day's worth of time. At worst, they come back and they say they couldn't find an error code, they haven't solved anything, and you've wasted a full day of your valuable time. Owner B says, I know enough to determine whether a battery's good or not, and it's not worth $300 of my time to play games with a dealer. I'm going to replace it with something better than OEM. I'm the latter type of owner. Let's take care of this problem before it really becomes an issue when I'm in the middle of nowhere. So let's start this process by gathering some data on the old battery. I went down this path a couple of months ago when I started getting warning messages about low battery condition from my truck. If you go to my channel, you can find the video here where I installed an inexpensive Bluetooth battery monitor. Since I've had this monitor, I've been shocked to see the battery actually read below 12 volts on cold winter mornings. And it really doesn't get that cold in the south where I live. That's not good. And I'm literally just asking to get stranded in the dark if I don't address this now. Here's a live test that I did a couple of weeks ago. All right, it's 5:30 in the morning, and we're gonna go check on our battery without the key in the pocket. So this is not going to light up. So this shows the actual state of the battery. So 12.44 is the last voltage that I got from the battery. And so right now it's at 12.51. So I've just connected to, I'm in front of the truck right now, and the battery is sitting there at a resting voltage of 12.51. When I come out here in a minute with my key in my pocket, I bet you that just the lights coming on will drag this down below 12 volts. All right, now I have the key in my pocket, and as I approach the truck with the welcome lighting, there's the truck waking up, 12.36, and it's dropping like a stone. It's not happy. That is not a happy battery. During cold mornings in the winter, it was well below 12 volts. And it's getting worse here. She's on her way out. Okay, so you believe you've got a bad battery. Now, I asked around a lot about this, and my question was, should I take this down to the dealer and see if I can process this as a warranty claim? Because I've only had my truck for 2 years. Batteries should be warranted for more than that. So maybe at the very least I can get, some type of credit back for replacement on the battery. Makes sense, right? But then I started to think about it, and I listened to some of the advice that I got, which was basically, be prepared to waste an entire day to argue your case, because they will not replace the battery unless it's throwing a code. So can I get a battery replaced just because I believe and I can prove that it's getting soft? Not if it doesn't have a code. So instead of going that route, I decided you know what, for 300 bucks, I'm going to go ahead and just replace this thing because it's just not worth my time. It's not worth the aggravation of trying to hassle with a service manager to me saying, hey, I think it's soft. And he's like, well, we don't have a code. So back and forth, back and forth. What a waste of time. So I just made a decision. I'm going to go ahead and replace this battery. So which one? Here's the process of deciding which battery I got. Here's my thought process behind selecting which new battery I was going to replace this with. Now, I could have used the Motorcraft OEM, but I'm thinking that I'd just be back in the same place 2 years from now. So I wanted to look for something which is better according to industry experts. The main 12-volt battery in a PowerBoost is a 94R size. Now, the OEM capacity is 800 cold cranking amps, so that's the minimum that I want to look for. The weight is 50.4 pounds of the OEM battery. And it's a 12.35 volts, which is not high enough. This is a problem that I hope to rectify by putting in a new battery. So my specs for going shopping was 94R battery size, which is also known as an H7. Some people have tried to replace this with an H8, but it will not fit. The blanket for the battery does not fit around an H8. It's bigger than the tray will accept. 800 cold cranking amps and AGM, which stands for absorbent glass mat construction. So the first tier, and these are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. I'm just looking to not have to buy a battery again for quite some time. And these run about $180. I'm not sure how much the Costco one is. I'm sure it's equivalent to this if you can cross-reference your battery. A lot of these websites where you put in your year, your model, your engine, they just didn't have a listing for the PowerBoost. And so you have to know more about the battery itself to know what you're looking for. So that's the first tier. And again, this would probably cure my problem, but I didn't want to have to go replacing the battery again in a couple of years. So there's the second tier. And a lot of people have replaced their batteries with this second tier, like a Napa, paid about $250, and these are working perfectly well. Nothing wrong with this battery. It's a direct replacement for the OEM. But I'm thinking, while I'm in there doing this, while I'm spending all this time and effort trying to replace this battery, is it worth going to the third tier? I have heard of this battery brand called Northstar, which supposedly is the best one that's out there. But unfortunately, when I want to go find it and source it, they apparently have just sold their plant to a company called Enersys, which also makes Odyssey. So they're still producing the X2 Power, or the Northstar type of battery, just rebadged as X2 Power. So that's good enough for me. I was able to find these locally at Batteries Plus. Who knew that Batteries Plus sold batteries like this? So it's actually a very, very high quality unit, and you can tell when you pick the thing up and lift it because, boy, it's a lot heavier. It's a lot more dense construction that's in there. Remember, the OEM battery was 50.4 pounds. So this is about 4.5 pounds heavier. And the new battery resting voltage certainly is much, much higher. And also notice that it's got 840 cold cranking amps, which is 5% higher than the OEM spec. So everything is good. This is a direct replacement, and it is a higher spec battery unit. I should not have any problems with this thing going forward. All right, I bought the battery, brought it home, and I want to get that $14 cord charge back and get the OEM battery back to Batteries Plus. So I'm going to do a high speed remove and replace battery video here. You guys have all replaced batteries before, so I'm not going to belabor the point here. We'll go at about 4 times normal speed. You can see my battery monitor. The little Bluetooth battery monitor is mounted through Velcro on top of the battery. The thing I'll note here is that Ford somehow loves to require you to use many, many different tools to do the same job. So a lot of these little screws for the terminals are not the same from positive to negative. So be prepared to have a lot of different wrenches on hand to get this job done. Now, sometimes the terminals will be a little bit sticky trying to get them off, and what you have to do is spread those, put a flat blade right in that gap there and widen it out, and then you'll be able to pull the terminal directly right off like so. And then the next thing you want to do is go ahead and I just stuck a glove here over the positive terminal just to make sure that we didn't have any, incidental contact happening there. There's probably lots of different ways that you can insulate this or take care of this. So I needed to remove, in this case, the negative ground tap from this and all the wiring harnesses, get them out of the way so you're not going to be yanking any wires or, putting any strain on anything as you pull the old battery out. Here's the mounting screw, which requires far too many turns to loosen, but eventually this thing will come loose and you can pull this straight out. You can see the strap as well as the blanket that goes around the battery. So again, through this step, just make sure you have everything out of the way. You're not going to be yanking on any of the cables and it'll pull straight out. Now what you want to do is go ahead and get your little Dyson or whatever shop vac in there and just get all the junk out of the bottom of the battery tray. Why not? This is the only chance that you'll get in the next several years to do that same job. Now it's time to put the new battery in place, put the blanket over it, and then carefully lower it, kind of like a coffin into a grave here. It's not easy to do with 55 pounds in your hands, but there you go. Again, the whole point of this process is to make sure you're not on top of any cables, you're not pinching anything, you don't have any stress on any of the cabling systems. Installation is the opposite of removal. You just get everything set up, cinch down, and then find all those strange little wrenches that you never knew that you even had, and go ahead and tighten all the battery cables down. And that's pretty much the whole process of replacing this. It really didn't take very much time at all. It was about the same amount of time as it took to watch this video to get this battery in there. Now, while you're in there finishing things up, double check to make sure that you haven't pinched any cables, that you don't have a wiring harness that is trapped underneath the battery itself. This is your one shot to get it right. I mean, again, this is a simple job and there's no reason to rush through it. Just make sure to do a final check on everything and do it right the first time. When I was a kid, I used to read those J.C. Whitney catalogs and be so entranced by spark plugs that would make your car get 5 miles a gallon more. Things like that. It was so easy to get drawn into that marketing. Look, when you replace a battery, it's not going to work any differently. Your truck's still going to have the same amount of horsepower, still going to get the same mileage. It's not going to operate any differently once the engine is running or once the truck is on, because the majority of the DC running voltage comes from the high voltage battery and the DC to DC inverter while the truck is running. So that provides most of the bus voltage while the truck is running, to keep it running. So really the battery's job is to get this thing started and to light up the truck, like the fuel pump and the welcome lighting, all that stuff. As you get close to it with your key in your pocket, all that brilliant light display comes from this battery. It does not come from the high voltage battery. So it's extremely important that this thing is robust. I have a much better feeling about that now, that I'm not going to be let down in the middle of nowhere at night. So how do we test this battery? Let's get to it. Let's go see how the truck is doing this morning. I just got a reading of 1282 a minute ago. And let's connect to the truck. There we go, 1281. That's a little bit different than 12.2 or 12.3 that it was before. All right. What you're looking at here is this is actually a battery voltage graph with time based on date. So it's showing a 7-day history here of my battery via that little battery monitor, that little Bluetooth device that I'm mounted on top of the battery. The battery actually got changed right here, right in here. And you can see how this changes everything at that point. So let me explain a little bit to you here. This is the upper end of the charging voltage, which is close to 15 volts, which is about as high as I've ever seen charging voltage. Usually I'm used to seeing about maybe 14.4, 14.6 or so. So it's a little high in the charging voltage, and perhaps it was high because of the fact that it felt that it needed to charge it. I don't know. The other thing to look at here is where it was dipping down to. And again, these are not that cold days. That we had much colder days than that, where the voltage was getting down to like 11.8, things like that. That can't be good. That is just not good, because things start to shut off below 12 volts. And you can tell that via Ford because it will not boot up certain modules when your truck starts up. And it will tell you that. It will throw off error codes and say, hey, we're in low voltage mode, so we're not going to open up the audio system when your startup chime goes off, right? If you've ever heard that come through your instrument panel, it's a very different sound than it is coming through your audio system. And that's a telltale sign that you got low voltage. So that's the lower end of things. Now, notice what's happening here is that these long moves down here, this is where the truck was rusting overnight. So these were times where it was not being driven, and there's a certain drop in voltage which occurs over time, which is pretty normal. So again, you can see the spikes of activity, which is me driving, going somewhere. So high charging voltage, and then the battery would draw down over the cold and with the time. So a thing I want you to see is that generally the battery was running around in this range here. You know, mid 12 volts, just barely at spec. Normally you'd want at least 12.6 to 12.8. And notice what's happened since we've replaced the battery is that now this is up in this range. That is the normal range. That's where it should be during resting time. So to me, this is all the evidence that I need that we've gotten in front of the problem. Had I let this go on for another month or two, or maybe, who knows, next winter, all of a sudden, one day I'd go to start it, boom, dead. This is how it happens, right? So you got to get in front of these things. So I hope this video has been helpful for you to understand. All right, mission accomplished, problem solved. I learned a lot through this whole process. Hope you picked up something as well from this video. Again, I'm not a professional battery guy, so if I got anything wrong, please let me know in the comments below, as well as I get all my ideas from viewers just like yourself. So if there's something you'd like to see me build or talk about in the next video, please let me know, of course, in the comments below. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next video.